management. The learning objective today, the main aim is to explain the concept of competitive advantage and its classes and the drivers of competitive advantage. So at the end of this lesson, students should be able to define what is competitive advantage. Students should be able to explain the classes of competitive advantage and the key drivers of competitive advantage. You should be able to explain it for me. I'm going to ask if we have been able to meet up the learning outcome. So it will not be tricky questions if I'm asking. So let's look at what is competitive advantage. It's all about market share and revenue. It's all about competition. So a corporate firm within an industry will be struggling in achieving a higher market share or revenue. That is called competition. For example, in the supermarket industry, we know we have the Tesco, we know we have Asda, we have Lidl, and we also have Aldi. We have Sainsbury. There's a lot of them. So you can compare, for example, you're buying a bathing soap from Sainsbury, you can compare the price with that of Tesco or that of Lidl or Aldi. Or you're buying, for example, a cake from Aldi, you can't compare it. So most of them, they are struggling and fighting to get a market share. And what they do, some of them, they reduce the price, they reduce the value. You can't compare someone using an iPhone, for example, the latest iPhone, which is iPhone 12 Pro Max, is worth over £1,000. And you could get some Android phone, which, for example, like Philips, like Samsung, you could get them even less than £1,000. Like how we get like, there are a lot of Android phones now. Samsung, you could get it even less than £1,000. So that's just a simple definition of competitive advantage. The winner is said to have a competitive advantage. Competitive advantage is a firm ability or potential to create persistent value, to offer lower price in a way that his rival cannot do, to earn higher rate of revenue. You see, like Tesco's, they have even their own product. Asda have their own Asda brand. What do? They bring the same product, but they'll change maybe the labeling or maybe one little thing. It will not be the same as, for example, if you're buying salad cream or you're buying Asda rice, is different from Uncle Ben's rice. So you could see that there's a little thing. If you're buying pasta, you can't compare the pasta you're buying Lidl or Aldi with the pasta you're buying Sainsbury. So these guys reduce it to gain competitive advantage, to be able to meet up with the likes of Sainsbury and Asda. Okay. So let's look at the global smartphone operating system and the market share as at 2009 till 2016. Looking at this, the green is what Android operating system. Microsoft is white, is like gray color. iOS is what, blue. Symbian phone is like a brown. So if we are looking at these, in 2009, Android phone have the least market share, which is 3.9%. So Android phone were struggling to gain competitive advantage in the operating system market. But in the future, what happened was Android phone struggled in the first year, second year, third year. If you look now in 2016, Android phone has the highest market share of what? 84%, 0.8%, 84.8%. That's what they had. So the iOS had almost more than Android phone. The highest there was what? RIM. No, the highest there was Symbian. Symbian phone has the highest, which is 46.9%. And if you look, Symbian phone, even now, most people don't even use Symbian phone. They've been phased out of the market. They are no more producing phone using Symbian phone again. But you see, Microsoft is still there, and Android is still the people that have the highest market share. So let's continue. Looking at the classes, let's look at the classes of competitive advantage. There are two classes of competitive advantage. One is what? The low cost advantage. And we have the differentiation advantage. The low cost advantage is producing a similar product at a similar lower cost. You know, I explained the likes of Sainsbury's, the likes of Asda, and the likes of Tesco, and the likes of Aldi. So what they are doing is they produce a similar product at a lower cost, and they produce an essential equivalent product at a lower cost. As that, most of their product, they call it essential, as the essential product. They've got the toothbrush, they've got toothpaste, they've got bathing soap, they've got toilet paper, they've got kitchen towels, they've got everything as that. They produce same product, but at a very lower price. So let's look at the differentiation advantage. What are these guys into? These guys are into price premium from unique products. We could see the likes of iPhone, the likes of Rolls Royce, the likes, yes, you could have even a normal Nissan car or a normal Vauxhall, maybe Vauxhall Insignia or any of the Vauxhall brand, but you can't compare it with any of the brand of what? Rolls Royce or Aston Martins. You can't compare it with any of it because these are cars that are very expensive. So what they do is they added value to a product and they charge a higher prices to more than to take off, to offset the value added. So what they do is that they put higher price on it, and what do? They use it to offset the value of it. So let's look at gaining competitive advantage by questioning old habits. I have a video here I want to play, then we'll continue with. Okay, let me explain before we go into before we watch the video. In the UK, in 1712, there was a tax law. And if you observe, newspaper industry, they used to produce maybe 4 sheet or 5 sheet, but in a broader paper. So what they do is that they put everything in 1 or 4 pages and they sell it to the public, just like the Times. You see the Times, they are not like A4. It's only magazine you get like A4, but all newspaper are more than A4 sizes. So what they do is that they compress all the news, they put it, sometimes they even print it in a little print, put it in 1 page because of the tax law. Because the UK government was charging newspaper company tax for each pages they produce. So what everyone was doing, they rather produce in a broad sheet of paper and compress everything. So they'll pay less tax because of they don't want to pay much tax of producing more paper. So this law was established in 1855, but other people forgot that, okay, the reason why we're producing in this broadsheet, this wider sheet of paper, is because we don't want to get more tax. But this thing continue time without number, and a lot of people still doing it. I've got a video here I want to play for you guys to watch, so you have more idea on what I'm saying.
Jonah, I believe there is no voice on this video.
Okay. What about now?
Still no voice.
No voice. Okay. Just 2 seconds. Copy it and play it here.
Our cloud solutions are intentionally designed for a positive impact on your business and the world. Learn how you can meet our sustainability goals.
Okay, I think this will be more better now.
A number of years ago, I started working with the famous British newspaper company, The Guardian. In fact, it must have been around 2003 or so.
What about now?
And until then, I had always assumed that newspapers were these very large sizes, simply because it was cheaper to print on large sheets of paper. But then I learned that I was wrong. In fact, it was slightly more expensive to print on large sheets of paper rather than small ones. So I asked them, why don't you make them smaller? That's more practical, if you reading it on a windy day outside or in a train or so. And then they said, no. All quality newspapers are broadsheet. They always have been that way, and customers wouldn't want it any other way. And, well, I didn't quite believe them, but I also didn't know how to refute their argument. So it continued as is. But then, shortly after that, in 2004, the newspaper The Independent, as the first newspaper in the world, reduced the size of its newspaper quite dramatically to about half the size, and saw a surge in its circulation. Then the Times followed, and it reduced the size of its paper and saw a surge in its circulation, and various other newspaper companies started to do the same thing, by the way, including The Guardian, and also a surge in circulation. Apparently, customers did want it. They did want a smaller newspaper. So the newspaper companies had been wrong in their assumption. So then I thought, let me try and find out where that practice came from, because nobody could tell me. And after some background research, I found out that it started at a very precise moment in time, namely in the year 1712 in London. The then English government decided to start taxing newspapers based on the number of pages that they printed. After which the newspaper company said, let's make them very large and print as few of them as possible. Now, that tax law was abolished in the year 1855. But newspaper companies ever since then just continued printing their newspaper on large sheets of paper. Now, that is what I call a management myth. an inefficient, outdated industry habit, which nevertheless continues to persist. I then started doing some research on these type of things, and now I'm absolutely convinced that any industry has some of these management habits, things that everybody does and has always been doing this way, and we just continue doing like that is. But in fact, they're wrong. And in fact, industry progress is hampered by such management myths. And individual firms, if they're able to figure out such a management myth and change it, may get a substantive competitive advantage out of it.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. And I don't know what happened with the... So let's continue. I hope you all can see my screen. So let's continue. So you could see questioning the old habits. A lot of people, a lot of industry continue doing the same mistake, but I've been able to spot out what happened in the newspaper industry. So let's look at the sources of competitive advantage. One of the sources is what? Innovation, leadership. If you've got good leaders, look at Amazon, they've got a good leader there. That's why I see them progressing. Labor, you've got people that are ready to work. You've got strategic innovation, like people that could come up with a good plan, not just what's happening.
Jonah, I would suggest, please remove this Alexander Mark Serra. I think he's doing something, in this particular session. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Alexander.
I think he's gone now.
Yes, it's like he's gone, or maybe he changed his name because I can't find the name there.
Yeah, he was, I think acting fishy. I could make out. He has, changed the screen, scribbled on your screen right now.
Okay.
There's some spam or something.
I have to stop sharing then.
Yeah, perhaps, you can. Now it's better.
Okay. Okay, like I was talking about the sources of competitive advantage. Most of the sources come from where innovation, the leaders. You have to have good leaders, not just leaders. You should have what? Good laborers, good people who are ready to work in the company, not just anyhow staff. You must have what? Strategic innovators, people that will be able to think, come out with good strategic plan. What they do is what? Scale. So like the scale, they tend to produce in large quantity. So like Asda and all these other guys, they prefer to produce in large quantity. Productivity, most of them, you see them, they are very hardworking and most of their products are efficient. Organization efficiency, the organization is ready to take any responsibility that comes their way. Let's look at example of low cost advantage. For example, we have the Norwegian airline. And we also have, let's say in the UK, we've got what we call British Airways. And we have what we call Fly B. I think Fly B, they are into administration now. I don't know the outcome. Instead of me to fly from London to Glasgow using British Airways, I rather go with Fly BE because it is more cheaper to fly with Fly BE than to use the British Airways. Also, we've got what we call Primark. Instead of me to go to Zara to buy my underwears, or go to place like Marks and Spencer, or go to place like Debiams. I think they are also into administration now. I'll rather go to Primark. I'll get good quality underwears that will last longer. Same quality. The only difference will just be brand name. Aldi. Instead of me to go to Sainsbury to buy my groceries, buy my fruit, buy my veg, I'll go to Aldi. I'll get it more cheaper there. Instead of me to ride Aston Martins, which is one of the coolest car, I rather get a Toyota car that will cost me less. So looking at the differentiated brands, for example, Apple is one of the expensive, brands. If you want to look at the issues of phone, want to look at laptops, even watch, they're very expensive. I rather get an HP laptop or a Dell laptop that will do similar thing that an Apple laptop is going to do for me, like the Mac Air or the notebook. So let's continue. The key drivers of low cost is what? The economy of scale. What they do is that they try to produce in a large quantity, just like mass production. Another thing is economy of scope. So the economy of scope, instead of them producing, if it costs £5 to produce 2 pair of shoes, they rather want to produce more shoes to get low cost. So if they're producing 10 pair of shoes for £4, they'll rather go for the one of 10 pair of, so if they rather go for 4 pair of shoes for £10 than going for 1 pair of shoes for £5. And sometimes they give them discount, just like likes of Asda, the likes of, is it Sainsbury or Tesco? If you do a bulk order, they'll give you free delivery. We all know about that. Tesco's do that. If you do order more, is it above £50 or £60? If you order online, they'll give you free delivery. So the learning curve means the more they produce, the more they get into it, the more they perfect their product, the more they hear customers' feedback, the more. So it's like a learning curve. So the more they produce, the more they get feedback, the more. That's why I see most of these industries, they've got what they call review. So every month, every year, they review the product. So the product technology, most of them come up with good technology that is equivalent to differentiated goods, like the premium brands. Also, I'll give you an example. You see, like Samsung, these guys, Apple iPhone started producing a phone with 4 cameras and 2 cameras. They started producing iPhone 11 and 11 Pro Max. Those were the phone that came with 4 and 3 cameras. After some time, Samsung started doing same. Samsung phone, most of them, even the least Samsung phone, which is A21s, has even 3 cameras. So what they do is that they produce same quality with using product technology. Also, product design. If you look at most of the design for this big product and this smaller product, they're almost the same. So they'll come up with the same design, but you see these other guys, the differentiated good, which they have the premium value. They come up with a unique, just one unique difference. That makes it more expensive. So these key drivers for low cost, one thing they are into is they're into location advantage. I will tell you something. Most of Apple iPhone are produced where in China, because in China you get cheaper labor. So they rather, Apple is an American company from California, but they don't produce in California. They produce where in China. Likewise, most of the clothes industry in the UK, where they produce their clothes is where Bangladesh. They go to the Asian community where they have cheap labor and they will be able to produce what they want to produce. So what they are into is a mass customer base, and they achieve substantial market share to justify innovative. This waiting has been unlimited minutes. Okay. Have the market share and the strategy. So they are okay with the better off set. Why these guys, the differentiated advantage, they're into what? Premium brand image. It's just the brand image, not in Zara. The same things you buy in what will I call it? Zara, House of Fraser. You could still see those jackets for less price in where in Marks and Spencer. You could even get most of them in Sport Direct. If you're buying any hood, you could get even cheaper in Sport Direct than even in House of Fraser or likes of Zara. So customization, what they're into, these guys are into customizing most of those their brands. So it's all those little customization that makes it more expensive. Also, unique styling. The styling of Aston Martins, or for example, the styling of Rolls Royce is different compared to normal Vauxhall or compared to normal Toyota car or Nissan car. So they come up with a little things like that. Also, looking at the speed. For example, Apple iPhone, they have a watch that you could use to answer calls, you could text, you could do anything with the wristwatch. That's also an aspect of speed. Also, Aston Martins, you could see it's a sport car. It could travel fast compared to normal Vauxhall or Nissan car. More convenient access. What most of them are into, they tend to have more convenient access. I'll give you an example. You see, like if you go to most of these big shop like House of Fraser, Zara, and likes, like in Glasgow where I stay, there you get free parking space for like an hour or thereabout. But if you go to Primark, you can't even get a parking space. So they make it more convenient access for people. Also, we have what we call unusual high quality. To me, most of these differentiated goods are just being hype. So what they do is that they recoup the added costs and they generate enough profit to make innovative strategy worthwhile. So they are into better off test. So we've come to the end of this session and I've got questions to ask. Now it's time for evaluation. Normally I used to ask my students one or two questions. So in order to check if we've meet up the learning outcome or the learning objectives. So normally I'll ask, what is competitive advantage? So if you know what is competitive advantage, you could type it in the chat box there. So will I ask, What is competitive advantage? I'm asking a question, please, guys. What is competitive advantage? Okay, what are the classes? I just talked about 2 classes of competitive advantage. Oh, thank you very much. Is it Sharia? It's a firm ability to create persistent value or offer lower price. That's it. That's just it. You've got the key points there, and I'm happy with that.
Thank you.
Alison Baker said similar product, lower price. That's it. That's just similar product, lower price. You're correct. So what are the classes of competitive advantage? There are 2 classes. I'm giving you a clue. There are 2 classes of competitive advantage. So what are the classes? I think we have up to 7 people in the class. So I should be expecting more answer from you guys. Cost advantage and differentiation advantage. Thank you, is it Shiria? I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Please pardon me.
It's Shria.
Shira.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Thank you for providing the answer. And also, I have recommended readings. I've got books for you to read if you want to know more about strategic competitive advantage. So if you have, Alison Baker said differential advantage. I'll take it as differentiation advantage too. Yeah, you are right. That's one of the classes, Alison. So if you have any questions, you could ask me. I'll be here to take any question, and I'll be here to answer your question.
So I've got a quick question, and thanks for the class, Professor Jonah. I think over the course of the class, you've actually hammered a lot on cost and how basically driving down costs could eventually lead to having a better competitive advantage. But I would like for you to help clarify that cost may not necessarily be the only drivers for competitive advantage. A classic example, I know you had mentioned the iPhones. In one way or the other, iPhones have gotten to become something everybody would like to have. They are not necessarily cheap, but still people would rather have them over a Samsung. So in a case like that, it would be nice to help clarify how things work out in that regard, because I'm just of the opinion that a lot of times it's not necessarily just the costs that's play a key role in having a competitive advantage over a similar brand like yours or a competition, really. So that's where I'd love if you could help clarify.
Okay. I'll still use the iPhone again as an example. The latest, let's say the latest iPhone now is iPhone 11, iPhone 12 Pro Max and iPhone 12. You could Google it, or if you want me, I'll Google it for you now. If you check, it's even more cheaper to buy the phone compared to buy iPhone, the previous version, which is iPhone 11, iPhone 10, and so. Why will I say so is because what iPhone is selling now, they're selling the phone without a charger. and they're selling it without an headphone. Why do they do that? They try to reduce the price of the phone, the latest iPhone now. I was opportune to have one. So what they do is they sell it at a low price, because if they include the iPhone charger costs more than £20. The headphone is more than £19. If you add all together, it will cost almost the least iPhone 12 Pro Max you're going to buy. It will cost more than 1,000. Is it 15 or 1,400 pounds? But that aside, most of these guys in different industry fight for market share and they fight for revenue. So how do you get revenue? You need to reduce your price. The market share, there are brands like, I will tell you things, there are people in the industry that are just there. You can't bring them down, even with their market share. The likes of Coca-Cola. Coke sells like water. They don't even need adverts. The price still remains the same. Pepsi is more cheaper than to get a Coke, but Coke still sell. Look like the iPhone itself, they don't even need much advertisement. They still sell. Why is it so? Because they've been in the business, they've gained competitive advantage over other rivals in the industry. So these guys, they don't need to even reduce their price. Some of them, the likes, okay, look at the likes of Sainsbury. People still buy from Sainsbury, even though they're expensive. But people like Aldi, Tesco, they have to come up with their own product, their own essential product. Yes, it's all about low cost, but sometimes if you look, there are people in the industry you cannot meet up with. You can, even if you try, you might be able to go above industry average, but you'll not be able to meet up in any way. There is no part in the world you don't see them selling Coca-Cola. There is no part in the world. But there are some drinks you could get, for example, in Asia, you can't get them in Africa. There are some drinks you get in Africa, you can't get them in the UK. For example, I live in Scotland. In where I live, we've got what we call Iron Brew. It's the Scottish soft drink. You understand? So Iron Brew is being produced, manufactured here in Scotland. The Scottish people prefer the Iron Brew compared to a Coke, but still, Coke still sell. The Iron Brew is far cheaper than the Coke, but Coke still sell. So what am I trying to say? You might not hear about Iron Brew. If you could Google it, it's a Scottish soft drink. They love it over here in Scotland. There is no shop, there is no place you go, you won't see Iron Brew. Everyone wants to, buy it. Everyone wants to drink it. So sometimes it's not all about the low cost. There are people that have been there in the market. They don't need advertisement to increase their market share. Their market share is already up. You understand? Just like Aston Martins or Rolls Royce, people still buy them. The only difference there is just the uniqueness, or one difference, one customized, they'll just do one kind of crazy design and everybody will just be buying it. People that have the money to buy it will just be buying it. So Ugo, have I been able to answer your question?
To some extent, yeah. I think it's fair enough.
So like I said, it's all about market share and revenue. So for like iPhone, they've got the market share already. They've got the right. They don't need revenue. Although they've got revenue, they still get revenue from what they sell, but their market share is very high. So these other companies that want to come into the market, they have to come up with a low cost so that people will be able to patronize them. So iPhone too are doing the same thing. The recent iPhones don't come with charger, don't come with headphones. Because of what? We in the industry, we know because of the price, not because of, they are telling us, is it economy efficient? They're talking about, is it environmental? You could use your old charger, you could still use your headphone. But I'm telling you, it's just because of the price, because this is COVID. COVID have been able to grant a lot of business. It's affected every businesses in the world. Even though the likes of Amazon are still selling, they're still getting more profit. But at a point in time, they were being affected. But they were able to come up with good strategy to meet up the market. So do I have any questions? I'm here to answer any questions. Do any of you have any questions to ask?
I believe there are no questions. I mean, Jonah, you can proceed, and perhaps we can have the last 5 minutes for the Q&A.
Okay. Okay, so this is the Q&A session. I don't know how the Q&A is being run, because I've asked my question, and I know likes of Alison and Shira were able to answer the questions I asked. Okay, let me ask one question. If you're a new company coming to the UK, what do you think you should be able to do to gain competitive advantage? If you're a new company and you're coming into the UK market, for example, the restaurant industry or the supermarket industry or the clothing industry, what do you think you will be able to do to gain competitive advantage? Alison said low product cost or added value. Yes, I'll go with the low product cost. Yeah. Any other answer?
Well, I think it really varies a lot
Okay.
because different verticals would have different entry points. So
Yes.
if we're going for a fashion brand, for example, the concept of what's it called? The concept of low cost is already there with brands like H&M, you know, and you may not necessarily still have to vibe with that to gain a competitive advantage. So really for me, it's going to take quite a bit of R&D. Really, again, it still comes down to what kind of vertical. So perhaps if you could help us streamline it even further, you know, to a certain kind of a certain industry or a certain brand coming into the UK, I think it will help create even more perspective. Because right off the top of my head, really, I'm thinking if I'm a fashion brand and I'm trying to get into the UK, right? There are like a couple of things a small niche brand could technically do. So let's assume your differentiating factor is the fact that you sell fashion wears with African prints, for example. You know, I think one of the quickest way to actually gain market share is having collaborations with a lot of these retail stores. In such a case like that, you are neither going the low cost route or the differentiated advantage, the differential advantage cost, but rather, you're basically leaping off, hanging off the successes of other brands. So for example, getting your products into a Walmart. I don't know how popular Walmarts are in the UK, but let's assume it's the US. Getting your products in a Walmart, that's really it does two things for you. It helps a lot of eyes see your brand, and also it increases your perceived brand because hey, you're in Walmart of all places. So for me again, like I said, it really just comes down to quite a number of factors necessarily all around what kind of brands or what kind of industries these brands are that are trying to get into the market.
Okay, that's a good one. Yes, there's what we call vertical and horizontal integration. So that's topic for another day. There's what we call merger and acquisition. There's what we call takeover. So those ones are topic for another day. But you mentioned good thing there. You said you need to look into R&D, research and development, and you were able to come up with nice idea. Like instead of you going directly to the market, you could go pass through another company that have a presence in the UK market instead of like establishing your own brand or coming up with your own business. You could maybe link up with likes of any of the clothing industry, maybe Debiams, H&M, or any of them, which is good. It's a good way to come into the UK market industry. Also, you could look into coming up with a company by franchise. Like, for example, we know like the restaurant industry, like what was their name? The likes of Subway. Most of the Subway are being owned by individuals. So like they sell you the franchise, the patent rights, you operate. And what I've seen in Scotland is most of the like Subway, or they have their own special menus. Like they even include something like the Indian and Chinese menu into it. So like what they do is they come up with their own. After some years, it's like you are free to, I don't know, I don't really know how many years you need to work with them before you could have your own. So most of them are being introduced, most of them introduce their own menu. They customize their own menu. And a lot of people prefer to say, I don't want to go to the Subway close to the city center. I prefer the one close to West End, because those ones have they have a lot of menu for you to choose from instead of you going to the Subway in the city center. You understand? So like you can come up with that, and at the long run, you might decide not to use the franchise again and establish your own. I know about 2 or 3 shops like that started, and later they just cleaned the name and just put their own brand after some years. So you could come up with something like that too. So let's look. Olushola said what he said, economy of scope. Yes, you could try the economy of scope. Like instead of you producing at a low cost, you could produce many and sell it at a cheaper price. And Shira said innovation, labor, and efficiency, etc. Yes, you need all these in order to be able to succeed in the UK, be it in the clothing industry, be it in the restaurant industry, be it in the supermarket industry, any of the industry. So I don't know if you guys have any questions to ask before we call it a day. Is there any more question, guys? Is it Rebecca,
Shreya, any
Alison?
Rebecca, Olushola, Ellison, Ugo? I believe there are no more questions. I mean, it was a very interesting topic. It was a very interesting presentation session that you gave, and I'm sure, I mean, everyone would be taking home something. And hopefully, I mean, we'll have more such